And local government normally in the space of public transport plays the role of advocating. They have no real control, a little bit, bus stops and stuff like that, but these big projects, their job is to advocate. So it's for that reason I'd like to introduce Councillor Stuart James. Stuart is the chair of the Eastern Transport Coalition. He is a councillor from the City of Monash who also have something to gain in relation to the Rowville Rail being delivered. The Eastern Transport Coalition represents something like 7 councils and around about 1 million people. They were the figures when I used to be the chair of it many years ago. So it's a pretty important group of councils that have done a good job so far. So let's hear from Councillor Stuart James in relation to local government.
Well, thanks, Mick, and thanks everyone for coming along as well. There was about 8 rows when I got here at 7 o'clock, and that turned into about 12 rows, and then it turned into we've got no chairs left, and now there's everyone gathered round. So it's fantastic to see that, and keep up the fight, please. The Eastern Transport Coalition, we've got a Commuters Count campaign, and I urge you all to come and visit that website over there. But all the Eastern Transport Coalition, the City of Knox and the City of Monash all have very similar motions that have been passed, that we accept light rail as an option, and it's good to have that other than nothing at all. But we've got a definite preference for heavy rail for all those organisations. Just earlier this week, I wrote to Minister Allen and also Minister Fletcher federally to commit ETC to that position, and Monash and Knox have obviously done that as well. So that is certainly the preference. So you've got a lot of support there on the ground level, certainly from local government. What we need to do though, and William sort of touched on it before, is we've got to create capacity on the line. At the moment, there's around about, with the current signalling, there's about run a train about every 3 minutes. So you get around about 18 to 20 trains theoretically on the line. Metro trains, however, they run at about 80% capacity, and they do that to take care of little small delays, someone pushing open a door or whatever it may be. So you're running a theoretical capacity of about 16 trains per hour on the current network. They're actually running 17 trains at the moment. There's 15 suburban trains that go through there and 2 V-line trains. The new high-capacity signalling system will move that to about 25 trains per hour with a theoretical capacity of 20. So we're really only taking the capacity on that Dandenong corridor from 17 to 20 trains. Now, obviously, the 7-carriage cars will make a big difference, but the projections that Metro have is that those 7 cars will be full by 2026, and they'll need to move to the 10-carriage capacity trains. So we're theoretically got at capacity network by 2026 before we move to the 10-carriage trains. So there's no room for Rowville Rail. There's no room for those trains to go on there. And that's why, some of you may have seen my article in The Age, that's why I've been advocating for an extension of the Alamein line to come around to Rowville. And that would be a duplication line from Alamein to Ashburton, and then from Alamein underground with a terminus at East Malvern Station to join up with the Glen Waverley line, then another station underneath Chadstone Shopping Centre, which would then go on to Huntingdale, and there'd be an interchange at Huntingdale, and then out to Furniture Gully. Upper Furniture Gully actually was the suggestion. Since I put that article out, I've had feedback and comments from everyone all over the place talking about cross-city connections, and that's the big issue that we have in our network, is we're all going to the CBD rather than cutting across suburbs and cutting across connections. And it'd be interesting, I haven't had a chance to speak to William, but it'd be interesting to know what percentage of people are jumping on trains just to go into Richmond or South Yarra and then come all the way back out again, and how much extra capacity we could change just by having those cross-city connections. That's an interesting one for me. The feedback, or since the feedback I've had, I've actually sort of changed my model slightly, and it is this. From Upper Furniture Gully to Belgrave is a single track line, and it doesn't really see much purpose. In my view, that should turn into a shuttle service between Upper Furniture Gully and Belgrave, and then the existing Belgrave line, which has already got the capacity all the way along that line, would come to Upper Furniture Gully, then go through Listerville, Rowville, Monash University, Huntingdale, Chadstone, East Malvern, and on to Alamein. So you're effectively creating a massive big loop all the way around on that line. And that capacity already exists. There's no extra capacity that's required because that capacity is already running to Belgrave. So that's probably the most logical way to do it. Now, I can only assume that the state government has gone with the tram option because of the capacity issue, and it's very, very hard to get anything out of any government anytime, but that would be my key. So my key message to everyone tonight is keep fighting, don't give up, but you've got to acknowledge the issues that we have in the current design of our network and find a way to make your argument in such a way that it's hard for people to say no. If you're extending that Belgrave line, and if you're moving that Belgrave line there, the capacity exists, so the only thing standing in your way is money. And it's fantastic to see the federal government's committed that money. There's more money to be had. State governments can commit them all the time. But what we've had from the ETC, and what I'm really, really pleased to see, is that governments of all persuasions and all political parties, I've met with Samantha Dunn, I've met with David Hodgett and Jacinta Allen in the state level. What's fantastic is that transport is on the agenda, because it hasn't been for decades and decades and decades, arguably since the City Loop was created or built in 1985, I think it opened. So it's good that we're having these discussions, and it's good that all levels of government are now committed and realising that public transport is an issue. So keep up the fight. I wish you all the best.